Hey everybody, this is Devin, and today I'm here to answer one of your questions. What skills do I need before I take my first web development job? It's a really common question, but I think some of my answers might surprise you. Let's go. I recently did an open discussion event with a friend of mine and a bunch of new developers, and one of the questions that came up was, what skills do I need before I start my first job? I guessed that they probably expected a list of programming skills that you needed before you could start your first development job. Like maybe you need to understand variables and how to write a function and object-oriented programming. But I really think those are the obvious things. So I tried to answer it and focus on some of the less obvious things and things that are not necessarily going to be part of your university curriculum or your bootcamp curriculum, or even things you would undertake on your own if you are self-taught. The first item on my list is version control. That really just means Git, because that's what pretty much everybody uses at this point. You want to understand the basics, like how to initialize a repository, how to stage changes, how to commit, how to push. But then you also want to understand some of the more challenging topics in Git, like how to reconcile merges when they're not perfectly clean and you have conflicts. Basically, all the pieces of Git that are built around collaboration. Once you go and start working on code that belongs to someone else, you're probably at some point going to be collaborating. So it's really important to understand how to leverage Git to make that easier and to streamline your processes. If you're interested in getting a start on that, I recently did a Git workshop live, and you can watch the on-demand version of that on YouTube. I will share a link to that video in the top right corner. The second item on my list is understanding what it is you do as a web developer that is actually valuable, that's actually worth paying for. A lot of people come through boot camp or through some college program, and they're really enamored with their ability to write code, and it is a really cool skill. But it's not what people are paying you to do. They're paying you to solve problems for them and to help them make more money. If you can understand that, you'll be a much more effective developer because you'll go to the root of what you're doing. What is the problem we're trying to solve here? And not only will you just sit at a keyboard and bang out code like some sort of development zombie, you'll think about the problem and what the solution should look like and whether the solution you've been tasked with building is the right one. In almost every case, this is going to be a benefit to you because it's going to make you more valuable, and it's going to be a benefit to your employer or your clients because it will make your solutions better. The third item I listed that you'll want to know before you start your first web developer job is how to read code. If you're coming out of a developer bootcamp or if you're self-taught, there's a good chance that maybe all of the practical projects you've worked on have been greenfield projects. In other words, brand new projects where there's no legacy code. That is great, and it's really valuable to understand how to do. But more often than not in the real world, you're working with code that's already in place, a giant code base that's been evolving over maybe 5 or even 10 years. And the worst part is there may not be anyone around who wrote the original code that's there. So you may not have a great resource that you can ask to understand it. That's when it's really important to know how to read code. You should eventually be able to open up maybe a JavaScript file that you're not familiar with and read through it and have at least a basic understanding of what's going on and be able to sort of unravel the code. In some cases, when the code is really poorly written, that might not be practical, but in most cases, even if it's not great code and it's not the way you would have written it, because it never is, you can at least go through and sort of get an understanding for what's happening. This is a skill that almost every employer needs you to have because very few employers are hiring junior developers to come in and write completely new applications from scratch. Even if you're not working with a lot of legacy code, if you're working with a team, you're going to have to be able to read the code that they have written They may have only written it yesterday, but if you didn't write it, there's still going to be a little bit of catching up to do and understanding the context and what is happening in their code before you can also contribute to it. Those are certainly not the only 3 skills you want to have before you go into the job market and try to get a web development job. But I think those are 3 really important ones that are often missed and overlooked as we're sort of obsessing about raising our technical acumen and learning new languages and frameworks. All that stuff is also important, but a lot of that stuff you get out of the job description and the requirements there. These are some of the things that employers want you to have, but they often don't state it outright. They just sort of expect you to have it. Or at the very least, you'll perform a lot better if you do. Thanks for watching this video. If you can think of anything I have missed, I would love to hear about it in the comments. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff I've missed. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.